Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
In this episode, so you want to DM. Where do you start? Where do you end? Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And we're here to talk to you today about you want to DM, but you don't know where to start and you don't know where to end.
Well, that happens. A lot of people come up with a game. They may have a place to start, but they don't know how to end it up. So that's one thing, Delaney, you think a lot about stories in the beginning, the middle, the end, when you come up with your DM stuff, and you're really, really good at doing home brews.
Thanks.
So me asking you more about this, since I've never DM'd, I might possibly someday, but right now I haven't. So let's start kind of like, why did you start DMing?
Wow, that's a great question. So when I started playing in 79, and the guy that showed me how to play told me to go out and buy the books, and I bought the J. Eric Holmes book box set, and started playing, and I came to school and we started playing and rolled up a character, and he started putting me through an adventure. Well, I wanted to play more and I wanted to learn more. So after each session, I would go home and I started this young boy that I would babysit, Scott, and Scott was, I think he was like 8 or 9 at the time. And I started playing with him, and I started playing the same adventure on him that was being played on me. And I was copycatting exactly what the other demon was doing.
Okay.
And I was learning in the process. Now, while I was doing that, I also started to draw up a dungeon because Dave, who was the young boy in high school that taught me how to play, wanted me to DM.
Okay.
And so I showed him my dungeon drawing, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, we'll go through this." And I can't remember everything. I don't even have that dungeon around anymore, and what it was all about. But I think he called it something about the Well of the Drow or something, because there was a deep hole that was a well that went way down and had spiders, and so he dubbed it the Well of the Drow, or the something like that, the Hole of the Drow.
Well, you have showed me, and we talked about this in another episode about world building.
Right.
You have showed me some of your old material that you came up with, some of your old dungeon maps,
right?
Some of your old storylines and things like that. So you came up with these by yourself, pretty much, or being influenced by other people who came up with stuff like that. So that's where you start. That's where you start DMing. So do you start from just a kernel of an idea, or do you start from putting everything together, gathering several ideas? What do you do?
First thing, read the rules. Do you have to know the rules inside and out? No, but it helps.
Yeah.
One of our young guys that we just recently asked if he would DM said, "Well, I really don't know the rules well enough," and we said, "Well, that's the whole thing about DMing, is as long as you've got others there who know the rules, who'll help you out, they're your crutch.
Yeah.
Utilize them. If they know the rules better than you do, utilize them." And it's a great way to learn and start start getting the experience of dungeon mastering.
Sure.
But yeah, coming up, you come up with an idea of what you want your world to be, and we did the whole big section on world building. So you first of all read the rules. You don't need to know everything, and then come up with a concept or an adventure or a campaign.
Yeah.
You don't have to do a whole long campaign. Feel free to do a dungeon, and you don't even have to design it yourself. There are endless dungeons or adventures that you can get, whether you dig out old dungeon magazines that maybe you have or your DM has. I can guarantee your DM doesn't know every one of those adventures.
Yeah, and now today there's a lot of tools
Right.
that you can use that'll help you create
Right,
your own
yeah.
dungeon. A lot of mapping softwares and
Random generators.
generators of dungeons and stuff like that. Now, keep in mind when we're talking about dungeons, we're not talking about dungeons in the sense of, it's a prison. It can be a prison,
Right. It's more like a labyrinth.
but it's more like a labyrinth.
Right.
This whole
Mines,
multi-layered
caverns.
series of underground tunnels that are just full of mystery and mayhem.
A great start to that. The Hobbit. The goblins.
Well, yeah, sure. The Mines of Moria is another one.
Right.
But yeah, the Goblin Caves. That's another good way that people kind of had this idea of going through the caves, and of course where Frodo, found.
Bilbo.
Not Frodo. I'm sorry, Bilbo. Where Bilbo found
The One Ring.
the One Ring down where Gollum's at. Of course, deep down in the caves. So you've got an idea. You want to put together a concept.
Right.
You got a concept. So what do you do when you get a group together, get some players together? How do you introduce them to this idea?
So the best thing to do is to have a session 0.
Okay.
Now, we haven't had session 0s very often. Only a couple of times
Yeah.
we ever done session 0s.
Yeah.
Most of the time as a DM, I start emailing or talking to the players about the adventure and what I'm looking for and what's allowed and not allowed. So that way they can start developing a concept. One rule I have as a DM is I want my characters to write up a backstory. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be very in-depth, or it can be a novel if you want. That's kind of up to you.
Sure.
So have your session 0, meet up with your players, let them know what your idea is, kind of get to know what they expect and what they might want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of the thing in the backstories, when I have my players create their backstories, is I can use that as a DM to feed some of the adventures. Now, sometimes you throw those bones out there and that the player has put in their backstory and they just don't pick up on it. And then other times they do.
Well, I mean, it all depends on whether people are playing, or the people playing, whether or not they pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
We can do endless episodes about players and the problem with players and why they don't pay attention to what's going on and why they don't pick up on the clues and things like that. But let's say you get everybody together and you have a session 0.
Right.
And you get everybody lined up to where they're going to play a character, they're going to go on this adventure. Okay, so once you get everybody going on that first part of the adventure, how do you maintain the story and the mystery of the journey?
By leaps and bounds. Baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
So, as any good author will always come up with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yes.
And in my campaigns, I always have the beginning, and I always have the end. The middle is, with me, I kind of go with the flow to do and ad hoc as the players go along. There are points in the adventure that when the player gets to a certain spot, then I'll have more for them. So it's kind of sparse together, where beginning, middle, and end, sometimes between the beginning and the middle, is all just kind of whatever I need to do at the time.
Okay.
And then whatever happens from the middle to the end is kind of there.
Okay.
And I'll throw them little bones or little tidbits
Sure.
as the adventure's going,
Okay.
to kind of precede them along.
Yeah.
So they know what's kind of going along.
Yeah.
Now, I know in our current campaign, you guys had the beginning of what you found out, and then you had kind of a little bit of an idea of where you needed to go, but nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you've kind of you got to a point where I found a way to give the information I needed to give, the way the players were moving along
Yeah.
with the adventures, because the best laid plans of any DM are always going to be ruined by a player. You can try to make a player do what you want, but players will always do what they want. So you always just kind of go with the flow.
Okay.
That's my view as a DM.
Okay.
So then you start giving them more bones to help them proceed towards the end.
Okay.
So that way they know what is the whole concept? Why are we here? The start of it, why you're kind of here. The middle of it, okay, now we know why we're here. And then by the end, they know how to finish it.
Gotcha.
The next thing is a DM that I would suggest is you come up with your house rules. What kind of house rules do you want to have? One house rule that I have is don't talk politics. Don't argue with the DM. We had a player who loved to argue with the DM, and he would say the same thing. Don't argue with me, but he loved to argue.
But he loved to argue, so he's kind of a hypocrite.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then, I have other house rules, what books are allowed, what classes are allowed, what equipment is allowed.
Okay.
How is magic allowed? How much magic is allowed? How is magic created? So I have my house rules and how certain spells might work.
Okay.
So come up with your house rules. Do they have to be in depth? No, you can come along with them as you go, as you play. Learn as you play. Learn what your players are doing and kind of go with the flow with them.
I remember when we played with this one DM, we had a certain house rule to where it was almost like damage reduction the more times you were hit. It wasn't damage reduction, it was like condition of your armor or something. The more times you were hit by somebody, the more damage you took.
I don't remember quite like that. I remember there was a rule with armor that armor would stop X amount of hit points of damage. So if you had an armor class that maybe gave you 7 and you took 10 points of damage, your armor would stop 7 points of it.
Oh, yeah. That's how it worked. I remember because I had that written down on a little cheat sheet there by my character sheet.
Right.
And I remember constantly having to look at that. And I remember there was something about that really annoyed me.
Well, dex and magical things were the only things that would stack your armor class. So you started off with your base of 10, and then if you had a +2 to your dex, then your armor class would then be 12.
That's it.
So it was easier for the monster to hit you and easier for you to hit the monster, but your armor would stop the damage.
Okay.
So
I remember that, yeah.
That was a house rule he had. And, I can see where they were coming with that rule, and I can understand it, that armor is going to stop some of the damage, but you're still going to take some of the damage, but you're not going to take all of it. It's not like it penetrates all the way through.
No, and that's a good idea, actually, that your armor would prevent you from taking a fair amount of damage.
Right.
A good idea, but I don't think it was implemented well enough during the game so that we actually had a clear grasp upon what we were trying to do with it. I guess it just never seemed to work out as smoothly as we thought it would.
Right.
And I remember having a little cheat sheet there and doing my calculations about how much damage I was actually taking and that kind of stuff. And it's a cool idea, and it's a cool house rule. Delaney has some house rules like no monks. Cleric spells come directly from the deity and not from your spell book, that kind of stuff, which is really cool.
So in our house rule with the cleric gets the spells that they need as they need them.
Yeah.
It makes a cleric a little bit more powerful. It also makes a cleric not so much a heal bot.
Exactly. Which I don't mind playing a clerical heal bot. I've done that before, but it's nice to also play a cleric who's involved in combat, who can fight, and and so you can have some excitement.
Yeah.
So those are house rules.
There was another house rule that he had that you never use your strength and your damage. It was all your dex.
Yeah, I remember the dex stuff,
which was real confusing.
Yeah.
That having an 18 strength or higher, only accounted to do a little bit more damage. It didn't affect how you hit. Your hit was more like weapon finesse feat, which gave you the ability to use your dexterity to hit better.
Yeah, I remember looking at that on my cheat sheet and thinking, because I couldn't use our actual program that we had to calculate damage and stuff like that, which is what we usually do when we're playing.
Right.
And I had to do it pen and pencil, which is fine. I don't mind that, but it was one of those things that just confused everybody a lot. And it's okay. It's okay to have house rules. It truly is. But make sure that everybody understands them, and also make sure that the players aren't completely uncomfortable with them too.
Make sure they get a write-up of it so they have it in front of them that they can reference, and make sure it's clear and concise
Yeah.
on what you want to come across and you want them to do.
Yeah.
And explain it to them.
Yeah.
In a very good detail.
Yeah.
If you're going to come up with these house rules of how it's going to affect their characters and how it's going to affect their play.
And I would almost say, if you're a DM and you have a house rule that's maybe a little controversial, put it to your players. Now, if they'll agree to it, that's fine. But if you get a lot of pushback, maybe you should abandon that house rule.
Yeah.
Because really what's going to happen is players aren't going to be happy. And if they're not having fun, they're not going to show up.
Right. They're going to drop like flies.
Yeah. So that leads us into how often should you play?
I've played in groups that played every week.
Yeah.
And I've played in groups that played whenever we could get together. It might be we would plan a game, and then we would be heading out the door to go to that person's house, which was 15 minutes away, and we'd be getting a call, hey, no game today, I'm going to go play hockey, or I'm going to go to Central City and go gamble, or I'm going to go to a football game or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's frustrating to your players, and that will crush a game faster than anything when you can't be concise with your gaming. Now, consistent.
Yeah. Morale has a ton to do with your, are your players happy? Are they having fun? We role play to have fun. That's the main thing.
It's escapism.
It's escapism, all right? If you show up and you're not having fun, people aren't going to show up. They're going to stay at home. They're going to play online computer games. They're going to watch movies. They're going to do whatever they want to do. Yeah. But if they're not having fun, they're not going to show up. Yeah, they're not going to show up. So, that's the thing is how often do you play? And as a DM, what kind of game do you run? Do you want to do it tabletop? Do you want to do it online? What's your ideas about that? What's your opinion?
In today's society, it's easier to get people online to game. The downside that I see in online gaming as a DM, you've got to go either invest in an application, whether it be Fantasy Grounds or some virtual tabletop application like Tailspire, and Tailspire takes a lot longer to produce because unless you're going out there and using the mods that exist to create your adventure. So you have to invest a lot more time, and to me, I think a lot more money to DM online.
Okay.
The other problem with online is it's easier to get distracted because now you're on your computer. Are you going to be focusing all your time into the game, or are you going to be surfing Facebook or YouTube or shopping or whatever?
Yeah. And I think from my personal point of view, one of the things I like to do is maintain focus on the game because I'm there to play. And I know there's players who sit there and when they're not in the middle of a battle, when we should be gathering information and collating information, they're just sitting there on their phone like this. And you're like, okay, did you guys get that? The Red Dragon just said we got to go into the labyrinth. And
what'd you say?
Someone's scrolling on their phone and they're like, oh, where are we going? They're like, we're going into the labyrinth. The Red Dragon was there and told us to go into the labyrinth. Oh, okay, where's that? It's like, the mountains?
Yeah.
He told us to go to the mountains to get into the labyrinth? Okay, am I going? Well, I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
This was a good distraction.
Yeah, knitting. No, we're not going to go there.
Or needlepoint.
Yeah.
Now, I know there are DMs out there who have a rule of no technology at their table. Yeah. No phones, no computers, no tablets, no whatever. I'm not that DM. I will allow somebody to have their computer at the table. One, there's an app that we like to use called Hero Lab that is great for Pathfinder. It's even got Call of Cthulhu, and it's even got some 5e and Shadowrun, and there's a whole bunch, 7th Sea. Yeah. There's a bunch of different games that it has. You do have to buy the program. Online, if you buy the online, you also get the classic version, which Pathfinder 1 uses, which we use. Yeah. So I do allow my players to use that because it does allow them to keep track of every spell that's cast on them. If there's a blast, if there's a prayer, if there's whatever, it allows them to keep track of those bonuses. So it's a little bit easier for them. Now, my players, most of them will actually not be playing on their computer as they're doing it. They're using their computer as their character sheet. And then if I say, what was that rule? they'll, we've got a couple of really sharp people who say, oh, here's the rule, because once in a while I make a mistake and I'm trying to remember what was that rule or what was that spell, and that way they dig it up and they can tell me really quick. It's the ones that are sitting there on their phone scrolling, trying to dig up their next spell, or Facebook or news or TikTok
or sports or whatever. That's annoying. That's a house rule. Yeah, speaking for myself, I like using the computer and I like using our program because it allows me to keep track by adding spells and adjustments like bless and prayer, and you add it to your character sheets a lot easier. I because I'm not
keeping track of hit points too.
Keeping track of hit points, because I am not a rules lawyer, and I'm not there to game to pay attention to every little technical aspect of the game.
I'm the system.
I'm a role player. I'm there because I want to have fun and take on the persona of a character.
Now, I as a DM, and you have to make this decision yourself. Do you want to use tech at the table?
Yeah.
I as a DM like to use the tech. I have displays that I use for it. I have initiative trackers because I keep track of all the initiative, and I actually I don't have my party roll the initiative. I know their initiative scores. I hit a button, it randomly generates it for me, and then it makes it a little bit faster. It makes combat a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And it also keeps track of my monsters that I'm running.
Yeah.
It allows me to play music and sound and just environmental things that I like to have in my game that is there.
Well, yeah, you use...
Which is things that you can use in online.
Well, sure, you use technology, and that's obvious. But when it comes down to it, we also do this. Look, we have our little figures that we paint.
Yep.
Of our characters. We use these too. And we use the map board as we move along.
Right.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, I'm right there with a reach weapon.
Yep, and here's the monster.
That kind of thing. So we actually do that too. So it's also low tech. All right, as a DM, what are you going to do? I think that there's nothing wrong with online. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people who can't make it to games, people who play in other parts of the country, other parts of the city, people who have mobility issues. We don't want to be ableist around here, okay? Not at all. People who have mobility issues who can't get to games, that's fine. They can tune in. They can play one way. If they want to play online, they can play via Skype, whatever they want to do, that's fine. If you're a DM and you're comfortable with that and everybody in the group is comfortable with that, that's fine. I'm not knocking online playing. One thing I will say about online playing, and this is kind of my gripe, is a lot of people tend to do it as a business opportunity. It's a franchise, okay? Well, I run like 5 games, and it's my franchise. And
it's $25 a player. I've got 6 players.
Yeah, it's a side hustle that I do where I play D&D. Yeah. Oh, do you like to play D&D? No. I have a canned program, and I just lead people through a dungeon, and I have dice rollers, and I do it as a side hustle. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be driving Uber, or I'd be, doing a porn channel, whatever. And you're like, well, that's really great. I mean, I love D&D because of this. And they're like, yeah. I'm not really into it. And I have run into people like that, okay, at work who seek to do that kind of a deal. Fine, if you want to do that, great. But don't be surprised when people criticize you for it, because a lot of people play because they love it. They love everything about it.
I like the face-to-face.
Yeah,
because that's my interaction. I work at home. I talk to people all day long, and it's my escapism. And the people that I run my adventures for, I don't charge them. Why would I want to charge it? I'm doing this not just for them. I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
It's my escapism as a DM.
Yeah.
And it allows my creativity to flow. When I come up with stuff and I'm writing up stuff and I'm creating NPCs and randomly generating art. I've turned to a program called Midjourney.
Yeah,
to start creating imaging for my players, because you've got the mind's eye, but you'll find that majority of the people are an imaged. They prefer images over words and description.
Yeah.
That's just human nature.
Yeah.
It's like the 3 lessons of training somebody. You have somebody who you can say, do this, and this. Go do it. And they do it. And then you have somebody, you hand them the book and you say, here's your documentation. Read that documentation and go do the job. And then you've got what are the majority of the people who are, here's how you do it. Here, Tom, here's how you do this.
You show them.
And you show them,
You teach
okay,
them that.
try it now. Try
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how they learn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the visual hands-on that's like gaming.
Yeah. The thing about that is, a lot of people do the gaming, face-to-face gaming, because that's their social interaction. Sometimes it's people's only social interaction. And what I found a lot of times is when we do our games that it becomes a safe space for people to be themselves, to interact, to let themselves flow creatively with their character, with their ideas about their character. If they want to do voices, if they want to do actions, if they want to do whatever, it's a safe place for them.
Right.
And you have to be very careful that you maintain that safe place. Now, we've had people in the past who have not worked within that safe space scenario. And it's led to a lot of difficulties. Now, I'm not going to say any names, about people we've known who have really infringed upon the sanctity of the safe space that we've created around our game and around our characters. But they have done it because of their personalities are the way they are, whether they're controlling, whether they're abusive, whether they're one way or another, it becomes an issue. It's not a safe space anymore. We've had a lot of people drop out and leave because they just did not like, the way another character who metagamed and overwhelmed the game and tried to game the system.
Right. Or the person just came across as threatening to them.
Yeah, threatening.
Even though they weren't threatening, they perceived it as a threat.
People, you can't help how people perceive one thing or another as a threat. That's just how they feel because of their past and the experiences they've had. But game groups should be a safe space. It doesn't mean that you have to accept everybody, but it should be that you tolerate people. Just as we tolerate people in society. We don't have to accept everyone, but toleration is what it's all about. Okay? And respect. A ton of respect. So I think Delaney has done a very good job over the years of maintaining that safe space, and I personally really appreciate that. I remember one time we were playing a game, and Delaney sometimes likes to use music in the background. When you're in a tavern, you've got like a strumming of a lute in the background, or if it's a battle, you've got some battle music, or if you have you're traveling through the wilderness, you've got sound effects from a river, nature, that kind of stuff. I do believe that we were playing music, and we were traveling in a caravan, and someone was playing music as we were traveling, and one of the players said, "Oh God, are you going to play that music during the whole game?" And the way this character said it just made me want to just crumble. It's like, wow, this player doesn't give a rat's about what's really happening in the game. They're just worried about their own inconvenience.
Yeah.
And with that same player then also, not too much farther, one way that we could identify between players is we have different accents, all right? And we would take a different accent for a player. And so one player would speak with this sort of accent, or one player would speak with that sort of accent. That same player he never did that. He never tried to do any kind of ideation when he did his actual characters. And he would get mad. He was like, "Look, are you going to talk like that during the entire game?" And it's like, oh, damn. I mean, okay, whatever. I'll just speak like this then. So the guy's from Northern Europe. He's got an accent. Well, I'll just speak like I'm from Texas. All right, whatever. So you've got to be careful to maintain that safe space. And Delaney has done a really good job over the time to do it. But as a DM, I really want people to think about that, what it's like to maintain that safe space around your players and with their characters.
So you want a DM, try and meet the people that are coming into your group if you're starting a new group. Meet them, go one-on-one, or if you have other people who are in your group. We did this for a long time. We would actually get the whole group together and say, well, we've got a person that wants, or a couple of people that want to join us. Let's go meet them at a safe spot, a coffee house or a game store that had gaming. And so let's sit down and let's talk, and we'll talk about the adventure. We'll get to kind of know them. We'll see if they're the right fit. And, a lot of times you can find, I as a person get a feeling
Yeah.
about somebody.
Yeah.
And I can kind of get the feeling pretty much right away. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes the feeling's not right, and sometimes after I meet them a couple times, it's like I'll admit that I'm wrong.
And that has worked,
Right.
but it's not always convenient to get everybody together in the evening to go meet. It has worked in the past. If everybody's in the same town, it's kind of cool.
Right.
But it has saved us from getting some real creeps, in our game. Thankfully, we've done that, and that's kept us from
Right.
getting a couple of real creeps in there, and we've never let
But
them
we've
in.
also had a few people that said, "Hey, I've got a friend that wants the game," and they bring them on in, and we're like, "Oh God, why did we do that?"
Exactly. We're like, no. Your friend's not welcome, man. Not with that kind of language.
So you want a DM. So
Yeah.
decide, you want to buy a module? Do you want to buy a campaign? There's nothing wrong with that. Campaigns are easy to go out and get, whether you're running Galarian or you're running Forgotten Realms, you're
Yeah.
running Eberron, or you're running Dragonlance, or you're running Midgard, whatever.
So have they improved in quality over the years? Have these single shot sort of canned campaigns improved in depth and everything and storyline?
I don't know. I haven't read a lot of them.
But how long have you been using them?
I don't really use canned campaigns. All my campaigns are all my own.
Well, I know that, but I know that you've looked at canned campaigns.
Yeah, I've looked at canned campaigns, and I admit that I bought a few of them
Okay.
from Pathfinder. Even a few that were in second edition that I had bought, or even first edition. There were the Studying of the Hill Giant Chief and the Frost Giant and the Storm Giant, and then there was the Drow, and so the D1s, the C1s, all those were all kind of tied together as a campaign. A1 through A4, they were all a campaign. What was it? I-7, 8, and 9 Pharaoh, which was an Egyptian, which was a campaign. All those were actually pretty good.
Okay.
And some of them can be really, really, really good.
Okay.
The problem I see with a lot of those canned campaigns is they are very one line. They're very linear.
Okay.
They're very focused.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you have to make sure that your players understand that
And stay on
before
the
you
track.
come in. When you come in to the game, that it is, here's the path. You don't have a whole lot of line to deviate. And then when it comes, make sure the alignments of the party are correct and fits in right with the game. Because we've explained that time and time
Yeah.
again, the adventure that we all played, we were chaotic neutral players, and we had this artifact, and we all decided, it's like, no, we're not going to go do this with the artifact. We want to sell the artifact and get out of this and go do something else.
If you do run a canned campaign, make sure everybody understands what it is in the campaign that you're doing. Okay, and one of my biggest gripes, we talked about this once before, but I'm going to bring it up one more time. Don't get caught in a campaign where you're fighting Titan spawn and it's essentially Godzilla's, okay, and there you are, a halfling thief with a crossbow that does 1d6 damage, okay. You're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to run and hide every time. You're just not going to fit in. Because what you really need in that campaign is a bunch of level 12 paladins.
Yeah. Now, the current group that we have, when we started putting this group together, as a DM, I said, okay, I've got a pirate campaign. I've got a horror world. I've got my all barbarian. Well, it's not really barbarian. It's like Viking, Celtic, Northerner.
Yeah.
Uncivilized. I have a Neolithic, and I threw out all these different ideas, and the player said, "Well, we want this one."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, that we can do.
Yeah.
We can do that."
Yeah. Good story.
So, as a DM, be prepared to have multiple storylines if you're gonna bring into a group. Have your ideas. And talk it over with your players, because your players have ultimate say. Are they going to have fun or are they not going to have fun?
So, that's a really good place to start when you ask, so you want a DM. Now, there's going to be other things we can talk about that too.
Oh, yeah.
But we want to keep these sessions, kind of at a little, a certain time period so you don't get bored and walk away and want to take the dog for a walk or whatever. So, anything else you want to add real quick?
Nope, I think that's it. So I think we're going to end this session of Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
May all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.